Welcome to Father-Son Flight Simulator. Today I'm going to be talking about the Lancair Legacy. Now, if you recall, a couple of months ago I flew this plane trying to assess it for VR compatibility and didn't do too well. I've since decided to take on a project to see if I can turn this plane into a VR capable aircraft. And I have been, I think, largely successful, and I'm going to just describe some of the things I've done on it to make it so. First thing is I've added these two hotspots, one for the pilot, one for the co-pilot. We can jump right in here from the teleport feature. And let's straighten out here. Okay, so almost everything in the plane, especially in the center panel, had to be completely rebuilt in order for it to work well in VR, and that's because of some of the background coding going on in the plane, and also because it wasn't fully modeled, and also because when I imported it into the modeling software, pretty much a lot of it broke up and had to basically redo it. So I'm just going to start off by just describing some of the features. First is the canopy. Now, in the original video, the canopy didn't work because this lever wasn't there, and I found out that it was in the wrong place, so I just fixed it and I made it activatable. So now you can close the cockpit without having to bind a key to it. Also, the key functionality still works, so if you have the key down here, all you got to do is click on the key and it will put it into the ignition. The fuel selector, I create a little hotspot there, which you can now use a rotation motion to select the right or left tank or off or cut off. So let's leave it on the left tank. Most of these buttons worked just fine, and so did the menu buttons, so I didn't have to do anything here. The master and the avionics work just fine, and you can see in the menu here, all the buttons are working. You can scroll through the menu, set your barometric pressure. You can set the autopilot. If you want to set your heading, you can, or your altitude, you can send it here. You can also set your heading here, although I've made it a little easier to do heading, and I'll go into that in a little bit. Your CDI will switch between your nav1 active, nav2 active, and your GPS. And you can go to, if you want your checklist, you can go to your checklist here. You can scroll through your checklist if you want to go through each one when you're doing your flight. Even has shutdown in there, so we can use those if you want. But the most difficult thing was to deal with the Garmin SL30, which is a sort of a custom radio, and it has multi-function capability on it. You can go set nav1 and nav2 with it. And the nav1 and com1, the com1 will be in tandem with what's on the Garmin 530. For the nav2, these buttons here will select whether you want com or nav, or if you want the OBS selected. And if you can switch from nav2 to nav1 using the select button here. Those are all modeled. Okay. And so let's go ahead and set for Seal Beach. And I had to, another thing is this dial here didn't have an inner knob. It's supposed to have one, so you now have both an outer knob and an inner knob, which you can highlight with your laser pointer. So let's set it to 115.7. All of these knobs have been tuned. And I can flip-flop the standby to make it active. Let's select the CDI needle for nav1. And now if I select the OBS, I can now dial the OBS freely. And you can see that's the vector we're on, or the radio we're on from Seal Beach. And the Seal Beach information's here, so you can see I've dialed into SLI. Okay, with nav2, if you want to select nav2, you just select here. But if you want to change the OBS, you can see that it doesn't work with the OBS unless I have nav2 also selected in the glass cockpit. So now that it's selected in the cockpit, I can now also move nav2. And you also have the to from indicator right here for each one, and you have sort of an electronic CDI needle here, so you can see that your plane kind of moves with the needle. Okay, so let's select it back to nav1. Let's get off the OBS, select it back to nav1, and I can switch it back to comms. And if I want to dial in 126.0, I can now dial with the inner and outer, and I can flip-flop. And if I want to hear it, the comms up
Orange
here work.
County, John Wayne, Skyline, information.
I can also put COM2 in there, and there I can have a standby programmed in, and then when I switch to nav2 or COM2, I can have my second set of comms frequencies in there as well. Now the other thing is this button here down here had to be completely rebuilt as well. So these also work. And if I want to switch to nav, I can switch that. And if it works in tandem, so if I'm switching one, I'm also switching the other. So I can nav one, com one, I can set with the GPS as well. Okay. The transponder also now works if I want to. I can have it in on, off mode, standby mode, or altimeter mode, and mode C, I should say. And one thing to remember, if you click the VFR, it switches between having nothing in and squawking 1200. It does work the same way, so if it goes on the order, so if I want 1, do it manually, 0, 0, I can do that. But if I start in the middle, it'll start where I left off. So you have to kind of know which one you're on, which cursor button you're on, and I could just switch that and it's good. And that's your ident button right there. Okay, so you now have the transponder mode working. Now the autopilot, I did something a little different here where this was originally dialing to the barometric pressure for some reason, so I switched it to heading. So now you can dial in heading using that button, which makes a whole lot more sense. And also I added a push to sync. So it pushes to sync also.
Autopilot engage.
You have your autopilot.
Autopilot engage.
Okay. You can set it for heading or nav. Heading, nav, or you can set it for altitude. Okay, so that's off, and you turn it off, you just hit that button and it's off. Thank you. Now let's these are fully working now, or they were working before. Though no change there. I didn't really have to do anything with the TPM. Okay. I did make it so that the joystick here is clickable now. It's tuned to the movement of the controller on the pilot side. On the co-pilot side, it works, but it's based on rotation of your controller rather than just moving it back and forth like that, like you would if you were holding it. So just know that, but it is clickable and you can latch onto it. The flaps are controlled just by drag axis, or if you have a bounding flap up, flap down, it also works. The timer here works, so you can actually click. It was working. Yeah, there it goes. I have a... There, that, yeah, it's working. A little hard to see the click spot, but it does work. Okay, yeah, it's counting up now, and I can stop and reset. Or you can have it on clock mode or whatever. The fuel also works. You have to activate the fuel mode. So to do that, that's the first button here. It's a little hidden knob. And then here I can rotate and put the, you can see the plane is sort of jostling as I put fuel on it. But you can set your fuel here. And then put it back into engine mode or engine dial mode. You have all your gauges here. And let's see, the lights here also work. The annunciator panel, sorry, is a push button. You can test all of your lights. And I'm going to go put it into night mode, just to show you that you can now use a rotation motion to dim the panel, and also to get the in-cabin lights going. Alright, so that's pretty much it. All of these work like they used to, so these are good. You know, the speed brakes here, they're modeled. Strobe lights, nav lights, just make sure your cross tie is on, so for those to work. Your fuel boosts, and you can see that it all works. And that's about it. I think I've covered all the controls in here that are now more friendly with your VR controller. And I hope you have fun flying this. I'm going to be posting this on the org, or at least a link to the org, but I also am going to ask if I can post this to SimVR Labs over at Threshold. And I want to thank also Harancer, who originally designed this plane, for acknowledging my desire to want to work on this and make a VR mod for it. And also to Joe over at SimVR Labs for helping me through some of the technical hurdles I needed to get this project finished. With that, I'll leave you. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time on Father Son Flight Simulator. Catch you next time.